In the early 2000s, the author Kurt Vonnegut wrote a short poem that was published in The New Yorker. It was about his friend Joseph Heller, who had written Catch-22, one of the most celebrated American novels of the 20th century. The poem described a party at a billionaire hedge fund manager's home in the Hamptons, two writers surrounded by extraordinary wealth, and Vonnegut turning to Heller and pointing out that their host had made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from Catch-22 across its entire publishing history. Heller thought about this for a moment. Then he said something that Vonnegut found so striking, he committed it to paper. He said, "Yes, but I have something he will never have." Vonnegut asked what that was. Heller said, "Enough." That exchange, 4 words at a party in the Hamptons, contains more financial wisdom than most people accumulate in a lifetime. And it raises a question that almost nobody in modern financial culture ever seriously asks. What is your enough? Not in the abstract. Not philosophically. What is the specific number, the actual figure calculated from your actual life at which you would be free? The point at which your assets could sustain your life indefinitely without you needing to trade your time for money ever again. The number past which everything you earn is no longer necessity, but choice. Most people have never calculated it. And that single omission, the failure to define the destination, is one of the most expensive mistakes in the psychology of building wealth. This documentary is about how to find your freedom point, what it means, why we avoid calculating it, how to actually do the math, and what happens to people who cross it without ever knowing they did. Part 1. What the freedom point actually is. The freedom point is the number at which your money works harder than you do. More specifically, it is the size of an investment portfolio that generates enough annual income to cover your living expenses indefinitely, without you needing to add to it or draw it down. You reach it, and the portfolio sustains itself. You stop needing to earn. You can if you want to, but you no longer have to. The financial mechanics behind this have been studied carefully. In the 1990s, a group of financial planners known as the Trinity Study analyzed historical market data going back decades and arrived at a conclusion that became one of the most referenced findings in personal finance. A portfolio invested in a diversified mix of stocks and bonds has historically been able to sustain an annual withdrawal of 4% indefinitely. The portfolio grows enough in good years to absorb the withdrawals and weather the down years without depleting. What this means practically is that your freedom point is approximately 25 times your annual expenses. If your life costs $80,000 a year to sustain at the level you want it, your freedom point is $2 million. If your life costs $120,000, the number is $3 million. The math is straightforward. The difficulty is not the calculation. The difficulty is being honest about what your life actually costs and then doing the calculation at all. William Bernstein, the financial theorist who wrote The 4 Pillars of Investing, put it this way. He said that once you have won the game, there is no reason to keep playing. The whole point of accumulating assets is to reach the moment when accumulation becomes optional. That moment is the freedom point, and most people sail past it without ever noticing. Part 2. Why we never calculate it. There is a researcher at the University of Pennsylvania named Matthew Killingsworth who spent years studying the relationship between money and day-to-day happiness. His work, which involved tracking the real-time emotional states of tens of thousands of people, found something that complicated a widely held assumption about the limits of money's impact on well-being. He found that for most people, more money continued to correlate with greater happiness well beyond what earlier research had suggested. More money, more happiness. The relationship did not plateau. But there was a catch. Killingsworth also found that this effect was almost entirely mediated by one variable, a sense of control. The money that made people happier was money that gave them genuine autonomy over their time and choices. Beyond a certain point, the additional income that people were chasing was not actually adding to that autonomy. It was adding to the performance of wealth, the signals and the comparisons and the maintenance of a lifestyle, without deepening the thing that actually mattered. The problem is that the performance feels like the thing. When you earn more and your life visibly expands, better apartment, newer car, more expensive restaurants, your brain registers this as progress. It releases the same reward signals it would release if you were genuinely gaining ground on freedom. The two things feel identical in the moment, which means that most people are working toward a feeling they already have access to and will not find more of by going further in the same direction. The second reason we never calculate the freedom point is simpler. We are afraid of what the number might mean. If we calculate it and it turns out we are already there or very close, then the question becomes unavoidable. What are we doing? And why? That question is uncomfortable. It is easier to keep moving and not ask it. The person who does not know their freedom point is not pursuing wealth. They are simply moving. And movement without a destination is not progress. Part 3. How to calculate your number. The calculation itself is not complicated. What makes it hard is the honesty it requires. Step 1 is a lifestyle audit. Not your current spending, but your intentional spending, the cost of the life you actually want to live once you are free. These are two different things, and conflating them produces the wrong number. Your current spending is distorted by work, the commute, the wardrobe, the convenience meals, the stress spending. Strip those out. What does a genuinely good day in your life actually cost? What does it cost per month and per year? Step 2 is applying the multiplier. Take your annual number and multiply by 25. That is your baseline freedom point under the 4% framework. It is not a guarantee. It is a well-researched historical benchmark that gives you a working target. You can adjust it upward if you want a larger margin of safety, or if you are planning to sustain the portfolio for 40 or 50 years rather than 30. Step 3 is the most important and the least discussed. You need to account for the income you will never stop wanting. Most people, when they reach financial freedom, do not stop earning entirely. They simply stop earning out of necessity. They consult, they create, they build smaller things, they earn in ways that feel meaningful rather than mandatory. Many financial planners call this the floor number and the life number. The floor is what the portfolio must cover without any earned income. The life number is the full version, including what you choose to do. The gap between your current net worth and your freedom point is not just a financial distance. It is a planning horizon. It is the length of the chase. Most people have never measured it. And because they have never measured it, they cannot know how close they might already be, or how far they are running past it without realizing. Part 4. The goalpost that keeps moving. Here's the phenomenon that financial psychologists call reference point adaptation, though most people simply experience it as the feeling that it is never quite enough. You set a number, you reach it, and somewhere in the weeks or months before you get there, the number quietly changes. Not because your costs have risen. Not because the world has shifted in some concrete way, but because the reference point has moved. The people you are comparing yourself to have more. The lifestyle you imagined as the end point has expanded. The freedom you were chasing is now one level above where you are, just as it was before. This is not weakness. It is the way the human brain is wired to process relative gains. We are not calibrated for absolute thresholds. We are calibrated for movement, specifically for moving forward relative to other people. The comparison mechanism does not turn off when you arrive somewhere. It simply recalibrates to the next cohort above you. The result is a chase with no finish line. Not because there is no finish line, but because we have stopped looking for it and started looking sideways instead. The people who escape this trap are not those with superior willpower. They are those who made a deliberate, specific decision to define the destination before they started moving, and to hold that definition fixed even as the world around them tried to renegotiate it. They committed to a number. They wrote it down. They built their strategy around reaching it rather than around perpetually extending it. John Bogle built Vanguard into one of the largest investment companies in history, managing trillions of dollars on behalf of ordinary investors. He structured the company as a mutual, owned by its fund shareholders rather than by outside investors. He could have taken enormous personal wealth from it. He chose not to. He lived modestly in the same house for decades. He said, more than once, that he had calculated his enough and that it was considerably less than the industry assumed. The company he built made tens of millions of other people's retirements possible. His own was unremarkable by Wall Street standards. He called this a conscious choice. He also called it the most important financial decision he ever made. Part 5. What happens past the line? There is a category of financial disaster that almost never gets discussed honestly because it requires admitting something uncomfortable. It is the disaster of too much, taken too far, long past any rational need. It is not the story of people who lost everything because they were reckless. It is the story of people who had everything and then kept reaching and, in the reaching, destroyed what they had built. The businessman who mortgaged a solid company to fund an empire he did not need. The investor who leveraged a secure fortune into a speculative position that collapsed. The executive who traded their health, their relationships, their judgment for a number that was already past their freedom point by a factor of 10. What is notable about these stories, when you study them, is how rarely they are about greed in the simple, caricatured sense. More often they are about identity. The person who has defined themselves as someone who builds, who grows, who accumulates, and who has no architecture for what they are supposed to do once they are done. The chase becomes its own answer to the question of meaning. Stopping the chase means confronting the question directly without the motion of the chase to distract from it. This is the deepest reason people run past their freedom point. Not because they need the money, because they need the movement. And because they have never defined what they are moving toward, they have no natural place to stop. Close. Heller's answer at the party was not humility. It was not resignation. It was something far more active than either of those things. It was a decision. A decision that he had made years earlier, deliberately and specifically, about what his life needed to cost in order to be the life he wanted. He had defined the destination. He had arrived. And he had recognized the arrival for what it was. The billionaire at the center of the party had more by every financial measure. By the measure that actually counted, Heller was richer. He was already free. The freedom point is not a fantasy. It is a calculation. It requires honesty about your actual expenses, discipline about your actual comparison points, and the willingness to sit with a specific number and say, this is what I am building toward, and when I get there, I am done. That last part is the hardest, not the math, the decision. Most people spend their entire financial lives in motion without ever choosing a destination. They accumulate because accumulation is what you do. They chase because the people around them are chasing. They arrive at the end of a working life with more than they needed and less than they wanted, and no clear memory of deciding either one. The freedom point is not the end of your financial life. It is the beginning of the part that was supposed to matter all along. Calculate your number, write it down, build toward it with the same seriousness you bring to everything else. And when you get there, recognize it. That is the part that Heller got right. He knew he had won, and he was done playing a game he had already won. That, in the end, is the whole thing. The number is just the permission slip. The decision is yours.